I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Caroline Sandoval. I'm with the Hayward Area Historical Society. And on behalf of all of us at Hosley, we want to thank you so much for joining us today for our African Americans in the Arts panel discussion. This program is brought to you in partnership with the Hayward Area Historical Society, the Hayward Arts Council, and the Hayward Public Library. And thank you so much for joining us at 10:30 in the morning on the library. We have with us today, of course, the lovely Vanita Lee Tatum, who is going to be moderating our panel discussion here with our 4 incredibly talented Hayward Art Council artists. We do ask that you hold your questions until the conclusion of the program, or we do have a designated question and answer session. One more piece of business before I hand it over to Linda. You did notice perhaps when you were sitting down that there is an evaluation form on your seat. If you would be so kind as to give us your feedback, it really helps us understand our engagement and really helps us when we're asking for additional funding for more programs like this case. That being said, I will hand it over to our Executive Director of the Hayward Arts Council, this is Linda Shimizu.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. We're very excited that you're here today. My name is Linda Shimizu. I'm the Executive Director of Hayward Arts Council. Hayward Arts Council mission is to promote Hayward as a cultural center and make the arts easily accessible to all people in the community. We have 5 galleries in Hayward, and I want to bring your attention to this flyer that is in your seats. And these are all the free programs and exhibitions that we have around Hayward. One of them is here at the Hayward Public Library, and it's one of the Black History Month exhibitions that we have right now. Also, we have one in partnership with the Hayward Area Historical Society that is also available to all of you for free. You can come in anytime during the week or on Saturdays from 11 to 3 p.m. So I welcome you all, and without further ado, leave it to Vanita and the panelists. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Caroline. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion for African Americans in the Arts. I'm your gracious host, Vanita Lee Tatum. I'm a visual artist, I'm an educator, and I'm a business developer. I'm a consultant. I've had a long journey in the arena of finance, and in 2016, I experienced something that's very familiar for young women like me who are very ambitious. I experienced burnout for the first time in my career, and it caused me to shift my perspective and my focus around my personal wellness and self-care, and that led me to emerge as an artist. I started doing artwork because it became my gateway for healing. It helped me to recover my mind, my sense of self, and on this journey, I discovered something that has become so precious to me, and that is my voice. Being able to have an outlet to explore more about who I am and the impact that I want to make and what I want to leave, the imprint that I want to leave in this world. And art has been that healing space for me. And that's something that the panelists and we all share together. And I want to take a moment to introduce our amazing panelists. I'll start off by sharing their names and titles, but then I would like to invite them to do their own introduction, about 30 seconds each, just so we understand exactly who they are and we can learn more about their work. So, Mark Sublett, our mixed media artist, welcome. Saleem Gilmore, illustrator, author, educator, and entrepreneur. Foote, photographer, and Khristel Johnson, textile artist. Please just give them a round of applause and welcome them. Okay, let's start off with Mark. Can you please share a little bit about your background? Tell us who you are, what you do.
My name is Mark Sublett. I'm a mixed media artist currently. Currently, I'm a mixed media artist. I've been drawing and painting all my life. I started out painting as a kid. My first paintings were done on pantyhose inserts, the little paper that came with the pantyhose. I had 5 sisters, so that was my best paper, drawing and and then later painting and charcoal work and a little bit of collage work. And now I'm currently doing mixed media art.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. We can go down the line, please, Khristel.
My name is Khristel Johnson, and I'm a retired educator after 30 years. I'm responsible for some of the quilts over there. In my field as an administrator, I faced many challenges, and one of them was motivating students to understand the significance of what they did today and how it's going to affect their future. And then understanding the importance and the value as an African American, which is the student I was particularly working with, that you need to understand the greatness from which you came and understand the talents in which you have. And so I also, as an administrator, was struggling with some of the racist practices as a woman in leadership capacity. And so in seeking peace, I started researching information about the African American experience. And so doing, I was fascinated with information that I was not shared with during my educational experience, wrote down a few facts, started with 1 square, ended with 3, did 1 quilt, said I was stopping at 3, went on to 10. I'm now at 63 and counting because there's so much missing information about the educational background, what our contributions are, and their significance. And so it's a passion. I am not a formal quilter. I'm an educator who is using this as a medium to communicate the missing pieces of the puzzle, which is a lifetime commitment as far as I'm concerned. But that's where I started, and so I'll go from there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll go to Russell.
Good morning. My name is Russell Foote, and I'm a professional photographer and photography instructor. I've been a photographer for over 40 plus years, and my goal as a professional photographer is to create memories that last you an absolute lifetime. So when someone stands in front of my camera, I make sure that they look their very best, and I make sure that they're happy with what they get. And I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've been fortunate to make a living from it. I haven't missed any meals behind it, so I'm very happy about that. So yeah, that's who I am, that's what I do. If you have any questions later, feel free to stop me, and I'll answer your questions in person.
Wonderful. Saleem.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out. It was a struggle for me to make sure I got here, and so it's exciting to see everyone here on a Saturday morning. My name is Saleem Gilmore. Everything Khristel said. That's my intro. I'm an educator by profession. I have yet to retire, but definitely starting in the K-12 world, educating in the community-based nonprofit space, and now in the higher education space. I'm currently an administrator at Chabot College. But I come from what they call Generation X, and what that meant for me was the future is unknown. It was my generation who spearheaded and laid the foundation and the groundwork for things like Black Lives Matter, things like the Me Too movement. And so we come into this space and out of our communities not expecting a lot of support, and so that was where the entrepreneurship came from my grandfather and great-grandfather. Around making sure we could sustain ourselves. And most recently, so I've done art all my life. I've been a hip-hop artist, a poet. I had got my inspiration to draw from my mother, who continues to draw and paint. But I also understand that the power of art. And so it was important for all of my children to be connected to art through entrepreneurship. And so my oldest son is an artist who's traveled the world doing music and installations. My daughter is a communications and marketing expert, which she learned from the family business. And she does sweetgrass basket weaving. Like, where did you pick that up from? And my youngest son here, Amani Rashad, we are co-authors of a coloring book called Before They Were Giants. And I'll close by saying that work is really about using art to educate. So it's a Black history coloring book that reflects portraits of our great African American heroes and sheroes as children. And so that's why I'm here and want to continue to educate. This is a great vehicle, an opportunity to share the knowledge that we may assume people know, but in real life conversations we learn that we are sometimes very ignorant to our own history.
Ooh, yes, yes. Wow. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. What I really appreciate about this panel is their willingness to have open discussion about the things that are relevant to our culture, our experience. And during our initial connection call, we had a really amazing meetup on Zoom. We started talking about something that was very interesting. It wasn't planned, but the question around Black art, what is Black art, emerged during that call, and let me tell you, it was a heated discussion. So I want to take the opportunity to just open up with the very first question here and ask our panelists, what is your cultural background? I'm sorry, not what, but how? How does your cultural background influence your artistic expression? And I'd like for everyone to just go in the order that moves you.
What? How you go ahead?
I'm kind of, I think it's kind of self-explanatory for me because I live as an African American. I'm a mother a mother of two. I've navigated this world as an African American, so my lens is always from an African American perspective, and so I realized that in going through an educational system, even as what would be a successful educational outcome, I was so void of knowledge about who I was as a person and the significance, because I've been given a selected narrative that marginalized people looking like me. And so the artistic part of discovery for me was the healing qualities of doing artwork. And so discovering who I was through research and then capturing that in quilted fashion allowed me to express that which I did not know and share it with others, because I didn't realize how empowering it was until I started on my own personal journey. And so for me, my lenses as an African American woman, as an African American administrator, and navigating this world, knowing that the narratives out there have not always been favorable about people looking like me, and then finding it a driving force for me to continue to push forward, to let other people engage in the empowering experience. When you discover who you are, not who somebody told you are, but you discover who you are, how empowering that is, and sharing that light with others.
I love it. Knowledge of self and preservation of history. Those are some of the things that are really hitting for me. Thank you. Mark.
Well, I grew up in a black neighborhood, of course. I'm from Kansas City, Kansas. And growing up, all my friends were artists. We all had our little styles of art. We mimicked what we saw. We saw television shows were limited, and most of our heroes were in music. James Brown, Muhammad Ali, Dr. J, Aretha Franklin, all these people were our heroes, and we drew them. And we took images of like Superman and Batman and made them black. You know, we took all the regular superheroes and we had to put our own image into that. So that was how I started off as a young person doing art. And, you know, of course it developed into doing stuff like album covers and stuff like that. But we always just followed, you know, the heroes that we knew that was around, and it was basically driven from music. You know, most of our heroes came from music.
Wow, and Mark, something so very fascinating about you when you talk about your origin story and the types of materials that you work with early on. And I have that same experience, using what you have to create and allowing this authentic experience to come forth and without limitation. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Russell.
Yes, as a black artist, and in my case, a black professional photographer, it is extremely important for me to be able to capture the black experience as much as I possibly can. And a lot of times, I'm tasked to photograph people that are in their 80s, in their 90s, even in their hundreds. And more than likely, I'm thinking this is probably the last photograph that they'll ever see of themselves. And I take that very seriously, so I try to make sure that everything looks good, everything's fine. And as a matter of fact, I was just asked to do that very same thing. The grandmother, the matriarch of the family, was 105 years old. So they asked me to come in and take the picture, and she was a little feeble in that, naturally. So I set her up in an area and just had the whole family gather around one at a time so they can have that memory. So when something happens and we don't know how long she's going to be here, they'll come to me and they'll want that picture. And so they'll want to be able to see that grandmother, that Black experience with their grandmother, in some cases, the great grandmother. So that's one of the things that drives me to make sure that I capture those moments. And one of the things I do for sure is when they come back to me, they ask for pictures, I don't charge for it. So that's part of what I do.
Amazing. That's the gift, right?
Yeah.
Helping to preserve legacy.
Yeah.
Saleem.
So, how does my cultural background influence my art? I think I have to start with the fact that I'm human. It's very important to make sure that we can start from a place that in a space that we can all be together, right? So Black History Month is not about teaching non-Blacks about Black history. Black history is world history. And so I need to start by saying that I'm human, and then I'm an African born in America. I am an ex-slave. Depending on how you read the history, you could still consider me a prisoner of war. My citizenship is determined by the 13th Amendment, and I'm still 3/5 human in the Constitution. And so starting with that, that's my background as an African, born here, captured, never acknowledged or recognized for what I've had to do, and still having to figure out how to thrive and strive. And so art, to me, always has a purpose. Coming from East Oakland, some of the art that really triggered me as a young person was the art of Henry Douglass, where that art was, in my mind, it was art as revolt, right? To just express the opposing position, to let folks know that we aren't okay with how we are being treated and how we are being, where we are living and growing up. My grandfather on my mother's side, Howard Wilson Sr., was a painter. He was one of the first Union painters painting the Bay Bridge back in the 50s. And that was art. If you could see the level of detail and the care he put into cutting a corner and making an edge. And so art is entrepreneurship, right? Art always having a purpose. And then for me, being able to use art as innovation, right? And so art is the Trojan horse for education. The opportunity to share information and knowledge in a way that it can be digested. I would also share that there are spaces where we can have these conversations with a level of protection, right? And so watching what happened in Oakland, watching what happened in New York, watching what happened in Florida when folks tried to say, hey, this isn't right, I want something different. We see Angela Davis, former Black Panther Party member, now PhD doctor at UC Santa Cruz. So young people like me were looking for spaces that were shelters to allow me to speak truth in a way that wouldn't get me arrested or shot, right? And so academia is one of those places. So I completed my doctorate. You can call me Dr. Gilmore, you can call me Dr. Saleem, or you can call me by my pen name, Dr. Amin. But I did that at Cal State East Bay, and part of that was to make sure that young man saw that it could be done. But the other reason was so that I had a shelter to speak truth to power in a way that folks would have to try to digest it. And then the last thing I'll say in closing is that art is a shelter, an ability to speak to a vision, to speak to a future that may not exist right now, to speak to a way of understanding the present that may not be articulated in the mass media. And so art is a sheltered place to speak truth to power as well. And that's how my background and culture impacts my art.
Okay, I think you're heating up now. Thank you, thank you. Saleem, hold the mic for a second. Can you tell us a little bit more about your pen name and the story behind it, or what it means?
Sure. So first, starting in this, I grew up before the internet, right? I don't know if you could tell. My first, I had an 8-track player, right? And so I grew up around what we call OGs who, when they were giving us knowledge, they would whisper in the car in the 70s. And I would ask myself, why are we whispering? It's like, this is important, you gotta keep, right? And so on the phone. But don't talk about that, young brother. Let's wait till we get right. So there's a level of secrecy that you need to incubate. When you plant a seed, it's hidden until it's ready to sprout and has enough roots to stand on its own. So you can't be an infant and out by yourself. And so my name, Amen, comes from ancient Kemet, Amen, A-M-N, which we now say at the end of most of our prayers. If we're Christian, we kind of pronounce it differently. But Amen anciently meant the power behind the sun or the hidden one, right? And so that was the name I chose because, again, art for me is a Trojan horse for education. And so while the art is the shining, bright star that everyone wants to be drawn to, it's the power behind the art that I'm really trying to express and impress. And then the flip side of that double entendre, right? My patron saint is Malcolm X. And so when I was a young boy trying to figure out how to navigate, I would have conversations with Malcolm X. And I'll share with you that he told me the most revolutionary thing I could do was raise a family. And so that's why you see me moving in the way I move now. But Dr. Amen also stands for Dr. Any Means Necessary.
Yes, there it is. That's what I was waiting for you to get to. You can't forget that. Very clear. We're very clear. Thank you. Okay, let's chat a little bit more. My next question. In what ways do you think art can contribute to discussions about race, identity, and social justice? However the spirit moves you.
Give me passing here. I'm gonna breathe.
Well, one of the things that I find so rewarding in doing quilts and doing displays is the conversations that come about as a result of it. And even looking at the work around me, when I first met the artist, I'm going to get your name wrong, so Mark. I saw that, I said, that's a conversation piece right there. Just looking at Colin Kaepernick and his arm raised high. Everybody's going to have a flashback to a period of time and relate to that. And so for me, I try to capture by using, first of all, I got to get the audience to want to read the information. And I started off with students, so they don't like a whole lot of information. They like tidbits. They like enticing things. So I put gadgetry on. I used every craft skill I had to entice people into reading just small information, perhaps to inspire them to start embark on their own journey. But it was so important for me. And I have to say, when you were talking about our ancestors to some extent, even this quilt that I have on the wall here, the silhouettes there represent ancestors, the spirits of our ancestors. And I can't even explain how the motivation that takes over when I'm doing some art. I get to what my daughter used to say, the zone. Don't bother her. She's in the zone. And that's true. I just get consumed with it. But it's because the messaging has got to go out. The information has got to go out. We're all aware of the climate that we're in right now and the need and the desire to erase that history. And knowledge is power. And I think the power we need to claim and not allow that to take away. I hope I haven't got too far off the topic, because that's my tendency, so just reel me back in.
I like for the conversation to unfold, as I said, as the spirit moves you. So.
Well, the spirit moves me in the sense that it is so imperative. Every person can make a difference. If nothing else, it's not something, it doesn't have to be anything big, but you start off with a conversation, and you start off with ownership of the information that we need to spread and share with one another. Conversation, because I've always been amazed that people can spend a lot of time learning how to sing certain songs, but if they took that same conviction every day and learned a fact about African American history, which is American history, how powerful we would be as a nation. I'm not only speaking to African Americans, I'm speaking to us as a nation, that if we took that, we had greater empathy, understanding, and would embrace, not push away that which we fear based on the narrative that has been promoted. So I'm going to give the mic up before I take over.
We have to control our own narrative.
Yes.
I agree. Mark.
Well, I'll use this to talk about one of the pieces that I brought here that's in the hallway, and it's called Traveling While Black. And in the middle of that piece is a picture of a man and two women, and they're standing next to what looks like a Model T, a very old car. And that one image is, for me, was telling a story, and I have to use my imagination to fill in the blanks because I don't know these people and I don't really know what took place, but I know it was one man and two women, and I assumed the person that was taking the picture was another man. And they were traveling, and they stopped along the side of the road to take a picture. Now, when I spoke to my father about different things, he talked about a time where Black people didn't have cars. You know, it go back so far where people didn't have cars. And he was bragging about the fact that his grandfather had a car. So then when you look at these old images and you see where people had cars, then it starts to tell a story about how that transition took place from walking to driving. For Black people, it was different for most people in the world, you know, to have a car. And then fast forward to this image is, you know, about Kaepernick. And I knew this was going to be a story in real time. So I started collecting the photos and kind of took me back to different aspects of history, talking about Malcolm X and Kemet and all these different things that are in the past and how we can have conversations about those. And I started to put together something, and that's how this collage came about. But there's a lot of history in our lives as it relates to the past and, of course, the present and future. And so these great teachers up here are very good at talking about those things. But I'm more of the type of artist who don't really speak that well on it, but I can put it into a piece of art and express that way. So most of my art expresses the things that I'm maybe not able to say or speak eloquently about.
Yes, it helps you clearly articulate just what you feel, and then it's going to be left to someone's interpretation.
Yes.
And hopefully a conversation can come from that. Russell.
Well, the conversation definitely came when we were on the Zoom call. And I got to tell you, when I took a close look at this art, at your art, then I felt like I could step into it. Because I know that, I'm sure I'm not the youngest one up here, but I'm not the oldest, maybe, I don't know. But I know for sure that looking at your art, which I love the art piece because I lived through a lot of it. I lived through so much of it. And I remember so much of it. And it takes me back. I stood there and looked at it for a while. Oh, I remember what I was doing then. I remember what I was doing then. I knew where I was when that happened. So it's a piece of art that pulls you in. So it's, well, pulls me in. It may not pull everybody, but that's how I got out of it. It's very well done. And it became a controversy for some reason or another. I don't know what or why, but, you know, the art is in the observer, which is what we talked about earlier.
We did.
Yes, we
I think
did.
that was one of our major takeaways.
That's my observation. Okay.
I love that. As I mentioned earlier, as an artist, for me, it's been empowering to be able to find and cultivate my voice through becoming an artist. And I've been exploring this medium, but it's evolving. And we really don't know what our limits are. And so I think that for anyone who may feel something inside that they want to figure out how to express, remove the limitations about what the outcome should be and focus solely on the feeling and allow that to be transferred through whichever medium you choose. All right, I have another question for you all. How do you navigate?
Vanita, can I touch that question?
I apologize.
I'll be brief.
Please.
I'll try. So I won't start with I was going to sing a little bit, but since I need to be brief, so we can move forward. The song Amazing Grace. The question I'm responding to is the impact of art on social justice. And so I mentioned Emory Douglas. I think of people like Octavia Butler, Audre Lorde, who have impacted social justice movements and freedom movements through art. But I want to lift up just briefly the song Amazing Grace. And I remember hearing that song in the church, and I would always get stuck on the second line in the first verse, that saved a wretch like me. I just was unable as a young boy to remember being a wretch. And I was uncomfortable asking to be saved from something that I had not done or understood or experienced. And so as I got older and realized that that song was written by John Newton, who was a slave trader, who was a captain of slave ships, helped to transport Africans from Africa to the United States. And when his conscience, as we get older, our conscience kind of leads us, and we start to feel our mortality, and then we get scared if you weren't already in grace before, right? And so Mr. John Newton wrote the song Amazing Grace as his own repentance for his own sins against people who look like me, right? And so the power of art is social justice. We have to first know the history of the author in order to know what we're reading. And that's a quote by KRS-One. And so for me, art is social justice is all about cognitive dissonance. I need to impact you in a way where your brain hurts. I need to make what you think you know and what you experience conflict so that you can then reflect and rethink. I am not trying to reinforce the stereotypes that are already there. And so when I think about art as social justice, I think about the way, including the quilts, where we used quilts during slavery to send messages, where we braided our hair in ways that showed the escape route to get from slavery to freedom, from where we use music to spark revolution. The revolution will not be televised. Where we use dance to stimulate movement in the body. In Puerto Rico, my wife, born and raised in Puerto Rico, she has learned the art of bomba, a traditional folkloric dance and song where the dancer dictates to the drummer. So the dance dictates the rhythm of the drum. That comes from Boma in the Congo. So the people who were stolen from the Congo and brought to what we call Puerto Rico maintained their music and their art, and they used it to attempt to liberate themselves. And so art has, for me, that power. It's not something that is surface. So cognitive dissonance is my ultimate goal in terms of sharing art with the community.
Thank you for that. I was getting a little choked up earlier, so pardon me. Okay, well, we will go on to the next question. How do you navigate the balance between preserving cultural traditions and pushing artistic boundaries in your work?
I don't know if balance is required. I think you do what you're driven to do. And for myself, I'll speak for myself. And you said, talking about the observer, I'm the observer as well, even while I'm doing my own artwork. So I'm doing whatever comes to mind, whatever I can express at the particular time. And if it's about social justice at the time, then that's what it's about. But sometimes my work is abstract, so I get to get into an abstract mindset, which frees me up from no boundaries and no restrictions and nothing else, just strictly being an artist.
I have to say that it is just, when you say boundaries, the one thing I love about art is that there are no boundaries, there's no rules. And so what I found relief when I started doing quilts is that I had a very demanding job. We'll work sometimes 10-hour, 12-hour days. When I came home to switch off all that noise in the background from my job, and I would go directly to quilting, and it would often be related to some injustices that I saw that was systematic and part of the institution, I would just basically be consumed with that, to turn off all the static in the back, because I had to do something. I had to make a contribution, so perhaps somebody else wouldn't experience or would be empowered. And one of the things that I do find that when people do read and they see similarities, just like in your picture there, Mark, that you trigger something within somebody else. But the beauty of art is that it's absolutely liberating and it's quantitatively therapeutic. I'll share a real fast story with you. I used to work with high school dropout recovery students, and many of these students had not been successful in traditional school environments. And so I had an awesome team of teachers, and we were trying to find ways to connect with students and reward them sometimes for the smallest movement in the right direction. And so we came up with, the math teacher and I came up with the plan, let's do a quilt. And it's not a fabric quilt, it's a paper quilt, it's laminated. And with that, we want students to sit around and we're going to bring them in. These are the kids that may not have gone to class but twice during the week, but guess what? They were going 0 times before, because again, they're high school dropout recovery kids. We would bring them all in, and I would play music trying to take away some of the roles and what they associated with the roles with administrators and with educators. And we played music and congratulate them about the positive movements that they had made, no matter how insignificant it may have been by standard practice. And while we were in the room, we had to write affirming comments on the board. We were all collectively, I am talented, I'm smart, I'm artistic, I'm kind. Fill up the board. And then every student had to do an I am square. And they did it, and they would write their name, put a picture of themselves in the center, and they'd have to pick from the whole pool of affirming comments and surround their face and their name and decorate each one of those squares individually. I would get all kind of crafts, whatever, we laminated. Then we created a quilt on the wall. It became so popular. We had 2 quilts. We had to do 1 and 2 in a different language because we had a lot of Cantonese-speaking students. And we put it up on the walls, and some of these kids were from the age of 16 to 22 years of age. And you would think they would leave that up there. We would come back on Monday, and a couple of squares are gone because they were proud of those squares. Because those squares said a lot about who they were as individuals. I am a kind person, I'm athletic, I'm intelligent, I'm a giving person, and that was so powerful. And that artistic expression that was uniquely theirs was part of a big fabric that was part of students that typically would not be defined as a positive environment, but they were at promise kids, not at risk, at promise. We just didn't tap into their promise.
God bless the teachers. That's all I can say. I wish you'd been my teacher. Really. Because my school was a bit different. And I applaud you. That's a very, very positive thing. I wish that would happen in more schools. You don't have to be a dropout for that to happen.
That's right.
You have to be, so for those students that don't want to go to class, that want to go to class and then don't want to go to class, and then maybe want to go to class the next day and skip class.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's very powerful, and I commend you on that.
Thank you.
I would concur. God bless the teachers, and society pay the teachers.
Give them a raise.
That job is a very important job. I actually had to leave the classroom because I couldn't figure out how my colleagues were paying their bills. I would go to class every day and teach and go home and struggle. And I would start asking my colleagues, like, how do you pay your bills? And the answer would be things like, my husband's a doctor, or my wife's a lawyer, or I said, oh, so your salary getting subsidized? So I don't have any subsidies. I have to make the money I need to make to pay the bills I have. Nobody's going to help me in that way. And so, unfortunately, I had to leave the classroom. But in response to the question, in terms of how do we honor our traditions as we move forward, I think young people, and I try to keep a young spirit, we always want to move the needle forward. We want to break barriers. And I think the way you honor tradition in that process is the West African Akan tradition of Sankofa, to stand where you are and look back in history to better understand how to move forward. So for me, as long as young people or any of us are moving in respect and honor of our past, I feel like we're honoring our tradition. And when I say our past, it's a very personal past, right? So each of us has different backgrounds, and what you experienced and what you were exposed to, right, determines how you're going to show up today. So I don't get to judge whether or not you're honoring tradition or background or culture. I have to receive you as you come. But I think the way that we honor our tradition is to look to the past and know where we stand now as we press forward to try to make a change.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you for those responses. Everything you all said, I think we just have to process a bit, right? We have to take this all in. And Black artists, well, the Black experience is unique within itself, and it comes with its own set of unique challenges. And so I want to talk a little bit more about how you all see the role of art evolving in addressing some of the contemporary issues and challenges facing the Black community. What role is art going to play?
Well, art is going to play a big role in everybody's life. I mean, because no matter where you go, there's art. It's just different types of art. There's so much, excuse me, going on right now in the way of art, in the way of AI and all of those things that's being, brought forward. There's some crazy art out there. There's some art that you can look at and say, what in the world was he thinking? That's what, you can't say what he was thinking because you don't know. But you either appreciate it or you don't. Like for instance, last night at the art gallery, there was a piece of art that struck me. It was CMYK and sRGB. It didn't mean a lot of anything to anyone else. But to me, as a photographer, it meant a lot. And there's other art there that's simple art that you have to really, really look at and say, well, that looks pretty good. Let me take another look at it. Let me look at it from a different angle. Let me turn it this way or turn it that way. You have to really dig into what you're looking at. And the way art is going nowadays, which is kind of good, was also kind of scary when it comes to AI. Because you can say to a computer, make this for me. And then there it is. So it's kind of different. It's going in different ways. Now for me, I have to keep up on those kind of things because I am a professional photographer and those things affect my business and affect what I do and what I create. So that's good for me in some ways. In some ways it's just, like I said, a little scary. There you go.
Wow, okay, pause on the AI point that you make there because there's this great hope for the future, but also impending doom. And I think that's been the duality of just being on the planet.
What's going to happen to it, yeah.
In general. As far as AI is concerned, what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that, well, first of all, AI is just taking what we already know and it's sharing that at an exponential level, right? So there's the threat that it could take over. But what I gather is that it just means that we need to keep creating because it's just mimicking us.
Yes.
If it's in the right hands, it's going to do good. If it's in the wrong hands, it can do damage just like anything else, any other tool. But we can use this tool to create. And I think it's going to challenge us as humans to figure out what our true evolution is going to be. And I think it's going to push us because there's that threat there of what could be ahead and what's unknown. But there's also great promise within that. And that's going to impact artists in various ways, depending on who you are and what you do. Thank you for that. Let's keep going.
Well, I think that the young people are going to decide the future of art in the same manner that the young people are deciding the future of music. I mean, music's going in a direction where most of us don't really understand. Our age, we don't get it. And every now and then they bring back some styles that we can relate to. And I think art is going to be expressed the same way. They're going to decide, and they're going to have the freedom, which is the most important part, is they have the freedom to decide to do and produce art any way that they choose. And that's what they're expressing most today. What you really see is that the young people are expressing their freedom to do whatever they want. And that's the way it's going.
Along with that, Mark, especially with the music conversation, it's so important for us to make sure that we are claiming and reclaiming the contributions that we made. Because when we're having this generational conversation, and then with contemporary music, sometimes we don't really know that Black people laid the foundation in these various genres, and it's been appropriated. You may know that. Do we know it? Our generation, it's something that we have to keep talking about and bringing forward, right? Beyonce recently charted #1 on the country charts, and it's a surprise to some, but we know that the music came from our origin.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I mean, when it comes to music, and I love music, I've always loved music. I used to be in a band years ago. As a matter of fact, that's how I wound up here in California, but that was a dream. Anyway, that's another story.
Okay,
That's a whole other story. Well, yeah, but the music part of it that's really, really cool, really fun for me is when I'm looking at a youngster that's going, oh, that's a nice song, blah, 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 blah. And what they've done, they've sampled a song from the Isley Brothers, or they've sampled a song from Aretha Franklin, but it's new to them. Exactly. It's new to them. Now, in that case, why don't we show them where it came from, the origins of it. Then they'll get some more appreciation for it, how it was done back in those days. So.
Yes, and that's the beauty about the current state of hip-hop. I think that hip-hop is something that unifies generations because of that sampling of the music. For me, growing up in the 90s, my mother loved the Isley Brothers, and there were songs, Biggie Smalls, for example, and I just watched the movie Notorious last night. He sampled a song from the Isley Brothers, and me and my mom both loved it. She loved the Isley Brothers, I loved Biggie Smalls, but we were able to connect around that connection. That was a bridge for us, and it brought our the history forward for me to start learning more about the origins of our music and how it's showing up for us in the current day. Mark.
Yeah, when my kids were young, my studio was in the garage. My painting studio was in the garage. And I would always have music playing when I would be painting. And I was using albums, playing music on albums. And I'd have some music playing, and I'm out there grooving to some music and doing my painting. The kids come running out, where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that from? Because they heard some rapper playing that song. And they just kept coming until finally they realized, okay, you got all the music. You got all the music.
Simply put, I just don't think you can suppress a human desire to express visually or artistically at any level, that you can do all kind of AI, and it's a threat without question, but it's like breathing for many people. You just can't suppress it, and it's part of our, I know we measure success and wealth by certain measures that may be superficial, but the creative imagination that it takes to come up with an ideal and transform that ideal onto paper or canvas, or to express it in movement, is something that I don't think you can suppress or take away. I think it's just too much a part of who we are as human species.
I agree. I'll say briefly that I see art as an engagement tool, and I don't think you can suppress, as you say, Khristel, the human instinct to get free. And so it goes back to what my patron saint shared with me to raise a family. And so young people are going to express themselves in the way that they choose. The role for us, at least from my perspective, is to fill them and ground them with things that will measure how they express themselves. 2 examples, I raised my first 2 children as vegan, and so no meat, no dairy from birth. So when we went to birthday parties, we'd have to bring our own little Black Muslim bakery cupcakes. We'd have to bring our own little vegan ice cream, right? It was a little weird. They felt awkward. It's like, I don't get to, I mean, you here, we doing it, right? And so they got to learn, like, I'm not showing up the same. So as they grew up, I didn't dictate how they ate, right? I just laid the foundation that vegan is how we do it at home. So my daughter to this day, 26 years old, still a vegan. My son, 30 years old, he eats some fish and a little chicken, right? But that's because he started with literally no meat. So one quick example. And then the second one, my son, so we talk about art moving forward. My oldest son, when he moved to London, no money, couple of friends. I didn't know how he was going to do it. The first thing he did, he started creating art and selling it on the street. And I wouldn't say it if I didn't see it with my own eyes. He took a piece of paper. Can I borrow this? Yeah, go ahead. He walked around the street, found a piece of gum, a matchstick, a leaf, whatever and glued it to the paper and put a frame on the paper and was on the streets of London making money. That's the creative power of the human need to be free. And it goes back to what was instilled when he was young. What is he pulling from? Like, I can't tell you what to create, but I can help ground you with what you pull from, right? And so that, to me, is the role of our community. And that's how we make sure art is honoring and respecting as we break barriers. The last thing I'll say is our coloring book, because we see this coming, and as an educator, again, the Trojan horse through art, we generated all the images of our coloring book using AI. And so the ability to come up with prompts to get a coloring book image that shows Ella Baker as a child, right? So there is power in that, and there is artistic skill to that, right? There will be jobs, there are jobs where it is the word that creates the art. It is not always the creative expression. And so while I don't necessarily say that's better, it's different and it's here. And that skill set is important for our young people to understand. They should be able to use these tools in educational settings to further their education, not to be demonized or criminalized for plagiarism or faking or cheating, right? In the real world, I can go to AI and say, I need rewrite this email for me. Make this sound, do I like that? Then I edit it. I like that, and I let it go. Am I okay doing that because I'm a professional, but a student is not because they're a student? So we're in this crossroad that I think we have to make some decisions. And I don't know all the answers, but I know the direction I'm pushing in.
Yes, yes. Okay, so a quick story, then it'll lead us to our next question. So I mentioned to you that I emerged officially as an artist in 2016. Right, I forget how old I was at that time. I was in my mid-30s somewhere. But I recall being in college and undergrad, and there was a year where I actually did elect art as my major. I think it came up within me, and I was very excited to take classes in art history. I remember the first day of class, and I went to school for undergrad at Chico State University, so it's a beautiful place. But it snowed on the first day of class, and I took that as a sign that something amazing was happening. I did not continue, though, with the program. I ended up going into women's studies, and I studied business and feminist theory. So you see, those are all my interests: art, business, women, history. But when I was in the program, the first thing I noticed was that the history of art that we were studying did not cover the Black experience. And so it made me feel like, well, what have we done? I didn't see us represented in history. Not that we are not represented in history, but the curriculum didn't reflect that. And I was discouraged by certain professors. I couldn't draw. That's not what I can do. And I thought because I didn't have that skill that I couldn't create. And it discouraged me from pursuing that major. And so I enjoyed the first year, but I moved on to a different discipline. And I realized that I closed that door, and later on, it burst forth from inside of me because it meant that I had to suppress my creativity for all of those years. And it was an economic decision for me to become a banker as opposed to an artist. But I would love to be an artist on the streets of London.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that would be cool.
But that was a part of my origin story. And I want to talk a little bit more now about the importance of mentoring, because I didn't have a mentor at that time, someone who could show me and help educate me about our history, help to inspire and empower me as a young Black woman who had artistic need as well as an emerging ability. So I'd like for you to answer, or can you actually just share some thoughts on the importance of mentorship and even potential support systems or networks for emerging Black artists that you're familiar with?
Well, as a professional photographer, there's a lot of opportunities for mentorships. It depends on who you know, where you go, and what the internet will provide, or Google will provide. However, in my world, as a photographer as well as a photography instructor, I'm always looking for mentors, I mean not mentors, but students who are interested in photography. And now, since I teach for the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District. I also teach for the Hayward, not the Hayward Historic Society, but the Hayward, what is it? One of the things that I do is have classes that teach photography from the very beginning, which means we never use automatic. Because my whole idea of teaching photography is going back to the basics. And since I'm a little bit older than everybody else here, whoever remembers film, yeah, I'll take it from that area and move forward. And so not only am I teaching the old technology, but I'm also teaching you to use your brain, because anybody can press a button and get any something on a piece of film or on a digital platform. So some of the things in my area of expertise, there are different places where you can learn. There's the Association of Minority Professional Photographers, which I'm a past president of. There is also PPA, which is the Professional Photographers of America. There is WPPI, which is Wedding and Portrait Professionals. They have this big thing in Vegas every year where you can go and learn about photography and have all kinds of things. So there's all kinds of ways to learn what I do. And there's all kinds of ways to learn what I do, how to do it, and how to become profitable with it as well. Because it's what I do for a living. So with those things, maybe there's questions that people might want to ask me about it later on. I can give you the information about all of those things. So passing that torch along. I get a lot of young students that are really happy and glad to do it, and then they kind of fade away because there's work involved. Yeah, there's work. Yeah, there's work. There's study. You can't just grab a camera and go, I'm going to take a picture. Because you bring it back to me to judge it, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with it, and I'm going to tell you the truth. And here, take it and do what I asked you to do the first time. No shortcuts. But once they learn that, because this is the way I learned. I learned from old master photographers from years ago, and I've always kept that with me. There you go.
I'm going to kind of do mine in reverse because I see myself as an educator first, and an artist was a hard title for me to embrace because I didn't see that as part of me. But nonetheless, I was mentored by one of the students. And there was this technology part of a program that students had to complete, this high school dropout recovery program. And it was one student, I'm just going to give his first name, is Marquise. Marquise drove me crazy because he didn't follow any rules. But he was so sharp. And when we sat down as a team on Friday to talk about how can we help this student get over the line, because sometimes students knew what button to push to make you push away and then get themselves in trouble and end up back where they started. So we were busy trying to find ways to intercept them. And so this student had a talent in doing Photoshop. And I said, well, I don't know how to do Photoshop. And he particularly didn't like me because I greeted him every morning, pull up your pants, take off your headphones. So it was a ritual we did every day. And so and it was a very small population of students, but nonetheless, I greeted him and I said, come on, somebody help me out. Because this is becoming pretty exhausting every day because he darted to the bathroom. As soon as I got close enough to him, he knows I'm not going in there and come back out here. So it was just a cat and mouse game or whatever. But he was a very smart kid. And in this tech class, the teacher said he's just exceptional in Illustrator and Photoshop. I said, okay, so let me see what I can work with this student on. So I was always in the classrooms because, again, it was a very small environment. And so it was not unheard of for me to walk through. And so I walked through, and there he was working. And first I saw some work on the wall, because this was all planned. I already had talked to the teacher, show me what work he's already done in this room so I can make sure I identify that with him when I come over there. So he pointed out some work, and then he looked up, he saw it was me, and he just kind of rolled like, here she is, I can't even have peace in this classroom, she's coming to the classroom. But my attitude was, it doesn't matter, I'm still going to work with you. And so I would say one or two comments, and I made a habit of coming in there a couple of times a week. And he kind of got used to me standing over his shoulder. And I said, you know what? This is so fascinating what you're doing. I said, I've always wanted to learn how to do Photoshop. I said, you know, I'm from old school, so you're talking about age here, typewriter, one finger at a time. So I didn't understand the technical part of things, but I liked the outcome. And so he surrendered because I was just laying it on thick. And it was true. He was gifted. He was very talented. And so I said, do you mind if I come in and take some notes as you're working on that so I can kind of go home and I'm going to buy a program for myself and then I can come back in. So he said, well, yeah, okay, you can. So I started taking notes. I had my little yellow pad out. I was sincerely, I was taking notes. But I also had a cheat sheet that I was going to use that the instructor had given me, so I would be able to fluidly go through it. So when I came back, about the fourth time I came back in there, he was busy telling me, this is what you need to do, Ms. Johnson. So now we had elevated from that antagonistic relationship we had, oh, here we go again, to good morning, I'm going to be in your classroom this afternoon, you can help me out. You know, it was not cool enough, so he wasn't going to acknowledge me publicly, but I knew he heard what I said. So about a week and a half into this, he peeks in the office, a place that he never went, and saw me in my office. He said, did you do your homework last night? And I said, yes, I did, thank you, but I'm coming back for some refreshers from you. I thank you so much for your help. I said, without you, I couldn't have did it. Our relationship changed when he graduated, which his father thought he was never going to do. He came over and introduced himself to me. So I was mentored by him by identifying the greatness that he possessed. And by identifying and empowering him with that, it changed the whole dynamics of how we interacted. The father said he has a renewed spirit, not simply because of what I did, because I had a pool of very positive teachers that were creatively looking at ways to reach kids. So mentorship can be found in many ways, not necessarily the season of time, but recognizing the talent and then embracing it and promoting it. And that's how it worked for me. So he's in fact a mentor. If he was sitting here, I would be saying thank you for those cues and tips on how I do Photoshop, which are on my quilts, as you see.
I love that. I love that. A thing that I'm sensing is that the mentoring, it emerges authentically in any cases, right?
So just real quickly, I wanted to congratulate one of my students. She may not be in here. I know Petra's in here somewhere. She's one of my students as well. Where's her hand, Petra? There you go. So one of my students, named Renee, I'm doing photography classes for the senior center, Hayward Senior Center. And she just couldn't get it. She just couldn't get it. Her name's Renee, and she just couldn't get it. But she was determined. And since she was determined, I was determined to teach her. So as time went on, she finally got it. And I looked at one of the images in the exhibition yesterday, I believe it was. And there it was, a beautiful shot of something that I taught her called depth of field. If you don't know what it means, Google it. Anyway, I was just trying to teach her on that particular part of photography, and she nailed it. She nailed it. I was just so proud to see that she took it all the way, all the way.
I'll say briefly, I always say that, huh? And I'm not always brief. As a classroom teacher, I'm always mindful of time and time on task, so some of these habits we got to break. But I would start by saying a lot of our cultural and family traditions are often institutionalized and commodified. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One would be the free breakfast program of the Black Panther Party, which was started out of a desperate need for young people to have nourishment in order to be effective in school. But when the larger society saw the impact and the relationships that were being built, it became a federal program, right? And so similarly, what we call mentorship today, in my opinion, is really built around apprenticeships, right? Where I very well could have become a painter by virtue of my grandfather being a painter. And that was not something there was no formal piece of paper, there was no training, it was something that was relational. And so I really appreciate your story, Khristel, because that's what I try to share with young people, and I do still to this day. When I look for mentorship, and I'm looking at you, brother, I try to find a reason to be important in his life. Right? I don't come to him and say, hey, you got something I want, I'm gonna sit here, fill me up, give me what you got, extra time, take me to lunch, like do the thing, do the mentor thing, right? Exactly. This generation now with this immediate gratification kind of moves in that way. I remember when I was a preschool teacher at Stonehurst Child Development Center, Dr. Willie Jackson was the executive director. I was so impressed by this brother because not only was he an administrator in education, but he was converting his home to a group home. He sold art on the side. And I was like, I just need to figure out how to do some of what he's doing. So he asked me to come over to help him with the group home piece. I'd done the group home work before. And I saw he needed his grass cut. I was like, you mind if I come over next week and cut your grass? Next thing you know, I was washing his car. Next thing you knew, I was getting all of the game.
Yeah.
We never used the word mentor. I didn't expect anything from him. I gave to get, right? And I think that's a human characteristic of this kind of mutual reciprocity that we often forget. And so for me, mentorship is apprenticeship. And if we can do it organically, the way Ms. Khristel mentioned it, I think that's the most powerful way.
Yes, I love that. And I love that within our community, it's going to take its own special form, reciprocity and giving back, and as well as receiving. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, one of the things I just want to throw this in there. My mentorship started in Baltimore, Maryland, a long, long time ago. Well, not that long, but anyway. Anyway, I was walking down the street. I'll never forget it, Park Heights Avenue in Baltimore, and I saw this guy get out of his car. Just when I first picked up the camera, and I saw this guy get out of his car. And he was unloading all this beautiful big lights and cameras and Nikon equipment. And he didn't know me from anybody. And I just walked up to him and said, "Are you a photographer? Are you a professional?" Blah, blah, blah. He worked for the Baltimore City system of schools. And he says, "Yes, I am." He said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Absolutely." This man took me under his wing. And I'll tell you his first name, and you may not believe his last name, but I'll tell you his first name. So, his first name was James. His last name is Smith. Okay. I thought that was his real name. His real name. Nobody ever believed me when I said that. But he took me under his wing, and he taught me, this is 35 millimeter days. He went from 35 millimeter all the way up to medium format and taught me everything that he knew. And he didn't charge me a dime. All I had to do was show up.
Yeah.
And the way it is, that's something that's to think about. In mentorship, all you got to do sometimes, like you did, is show up. You showed up, and you were a tutor. So I showed up, and he taught me those things. And so that's a lot of things that I do with my teaching. Have the student show up. Just show up, and then we can work from there.
Yeah, and those relationships are priceless.
Absolutely.
Once they're built.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, I'd like to take this time to turn it over to the audience. We can take some questions and just peel the conversation back a little further. We have room for a couple. So if you'd like to, I see a hand. Please stand, and should we get a mic out there? Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Are we going
It's kind of basic. I am an artist and a writer, and I just want to
hold the mic closer to your mouth?
Can you hear me?
Hold the mic closer to your mouth.
Oh, a little bit closer?
There you go. Yes.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, first I want to say that I appreciate you guys talking about the different styles and diversity and creativity, because I believe that that is so important that people acknowledge, and it's not just about African American, but also the artistic spirit that is in human nature, that we look for beauty and art around us and look for opportunities to access beauty and art. And I also wanted to speak to the issue of that I have a camera, and there used to be a Wolf camera store that would help me on Hesperian. And I don't know where to go to get my camera fixed. And I really did love that camera. And I don't know what's wrong with it. It looks just as perfect as the day I bought it. But the thing says something about the lens don't work or something.
What kind of camera is it?
It's a, what do you call those cameras?
Well, there's different
I think
brands.
it starts with a P.
A Pentax. Pentax.
I can't remember.
If it starts with a
I didn't know
P,
you were gonna be here, I don't
it's
know.
Pentex or Polaroid, that's all it is to it.
Cause I want that camera fixed so bad.
Okay,
So
okay,
now I have to use my telephone and it doesn't have enough space.
okay, all right.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that's
All right, so put the mic close to
Oh,
your
I'm
mouth.
sorry.
So, how old is the camera, would you say?
I wanna say about 10 years.
10 years old?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's kind of old, but there are older cameras out there. But if it's a Pentex, and I think it sounds like it may be, talk to me after the meeting. I could tell you where you might be able to get it fixed.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay.
thank you guys, you're doing a beautiful job.
Yes, thank you for the question.
Yes, Tracy.
Technical support.
Tech support, yeah.
Hi, Vanita. Hi, Saleem.
Hi.
I'm glad I came. You guys was talking, I might get emotional. But you guys was talking about the arts and, my whole life I've been a designer, fashion designer, and, and I got lost and I left it behind. And when you guys start talking about your art and how important it is to your culture and your life, and I was sitting here and I looked at your quilt, and the first thing came to my mind was like, that's why I'm so lost. I'm lost. Art is part of our history.
Yes.
Music, art, dance, fashion. It's so much a part of us. It just brought back that, that piece is missing, and I think I got so, just listening to you, I got so okay with buying other people's things, and forgot about my dreams and my, and without the gifts that I was given. And I just want to appreciate Vanita for posting it, and and it was a blessing for me to come. It was meant for me to come because nothing happened this morning, and I was like, oh, happy, And in my head, it was like, you got to go. Something is there for you. And I just want to thank you guys for sharing, and I appreciate you.
Welcome, welcome.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Give Tracy a round of applause. Yeah. We all have gifts and talents. We all have something within us. And like I said earlier, just allow it to unfold. Allow it to unfold. Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So to that point, it's something I was thinking about. I think, I wonder if we kind of as a community, we're sometimes reluctant to open ourselves up because we're feeling after a busy day of work and kids, we just don't have the energy to create,
Start over, start over.
to create, so I'm not sure if everyone heard,
No,
but
start
what I
over.
was saying was, I wonder if we as a community of African Americans, we're reluctant to open ourselves up to that creative side because we think it's going to draw too much energy from existing responsibilities. But I heard you both say, and you, Khristel, the idea of creation to brings more energy, so it doesn't draw or you kind of it motivates you in a way where it's not kind of a drain, but it it brings more. And I wonder if you can speak more to that.
Without question, like I said, I had a very demanding job. I was working 23 charter schools for Santa Clara County, and it was all kind of legal stuff that I had to deal with. And I hated the job, quite frankly. So I had to find a way of getting out of that zone. And so as busy as I was, sometimes I wouldn't take off my jacket. And I would start beating because I needed to turn it off. And we can get lost in the day-to-day operations of somebody else's job, following somebody else's rules. But the liberation of doing your own creative craft is immeasurable. And it is part of the healing process, as it was for me. And I think that we don't tap into it often enough because we do get on that grind mill. We just do what we have to do to keep up pace.
Yes. For me, during the pandemic, I realized that I was going to have to figure out a way to make more time and space for my creativity when I gave birth right at the onset of the pandemic. I have a 4-year-old. She's turning 4 very soon. And I had just become an artist, and I was connecting with the Hayward Arts Council, and I was getting my work into shows and starting to learn more. And then when the baby came, I was unsure how I could find time and space to create. And I struggled with that. And I felt like I had to just take these drudging baby steps. If it was a small way for me to put together something, if it was writing something, if it was working with whatever materials I could tear out of a magazine and just put it on something just to remind myself that the empowerment is there and I'm gonna find my strength back. And I feel like I recovered my strength, but now I don't have the need to feel like it has to be a certain way. And I think showing up is important, connecting with community is important, and then just taking the cap off. There she is, a 4-year-old just entered the room. I spoke that. Okay, so we're going to begin the process of closing out the conversation. Are there any other questions from the audience? And then, okay, Linda.
Yes, so I just want to say, besides thank you for being here, I want to encourage all of you to come and visit the exhibitions that we have. They are free to the public. You can get a lot of inspiration from the work that you're going to be seeing on the walls, and also outside where we have a public art in the Heritage Plaza across the way. But please, enjoy those visits, take it all in, and leave messages for the artists also. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer any questions that you have or to share with one another your creativity, because we're all artists. We're all creative beings. And I'm so excited that you're here today to share that experience. So now I want to pass it on to Winnie Wallace. She's Hayward Arts Council board member and also a librarian here. And this is a partnership with the library. So I want to pass it on to Winnie.
Ooh. Hi, I don't know. Are we basically done or?
Yeah, we're wrapping up.
Oh, okay, yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your time from your very busy schedule, I believe, especially when you have a 4-year-old at home. I just feel this topic, this panel discussion, African Americans in the arts, this is such a significant topic, not only for the Black community, like someone here addressed, but also for all of us in the community. So Hayward Library, Public Library is so proud to partner with the Hayward Area Historical Society and with, of course, the Hayward Arts Council for this wonderful program. Thank you so much, Vanita, and thank you everyone so much for the wonderful discussion. I just want to say thank you again, and we have a light refreshments served here, and we still have a couple minutes if you have questions you say something.
Yes, we're actually at time. So if you have additional questions for the artists, you can ask after we close. Again, thank you for joining us one more time for our panel. Thank you to our partners. Nice work. And remember, we're Hayward Arts Council, we heart the art. So keep going. Have a wonderful day.